It was the summer of 2025, and I swear the air in Austin, Texas felt heavier than usual. Like it was holding on to secrets it wasn't ready to let go of. I was 22, fresh out of college, crashing at my best friend Jake's place while I tried to piece together what came next. His mom, Emily, had this way of catching my eye that I couldn't shake. And one afternoon, she called me out on it. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she asked, her voice sharp but laced with curiosity, like she already knew the answer but wanted to hear it anyway. I didn't hesitate, didn't overthink it. "You know why," I said, and the room went so still you could have heard a pin drop. That moment, that split second where our eyes locked, changed everything. It was like the air got thicker, like the world tilted just enough to throw me off balance. I didn't know it then, but that was the start of something I'd carry with me for months. Let me backtrack a bit. I'd known Jake since we were kids. Back when we were tearing through the neighborhood on our bikes, getting into trouble, sneaking beers from his dad's garage fridge when we were barely old enough to know what beer even tasted like. Jake's family was like my second home. His dad, Mike, was a quiet guy, always buried in work, always dragging himself home late, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Emily, though, Jake's mom, was different. She was vibrant, sharp, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and make everyone turn their heads without even trying. She was in her mid-40s now, but time hadn't touched her the way it does most people. If anything, it made her more striking, like she'd grown into herself in a way that was impossible to ignore. Dark hair that fell just past her shoulders, green eyes that seemed to see right through you, and a laugh that hit like a shot of whiskey. Warm, bold, lingering. I'd always noticed her, even when I was younger, but it was different back then. It was just a kid noticing an adult who seemed larger than life. This summer, though, something shifted. Maybe it was because I was older, fresh out of college, carrying that restless energy of someone who's supposed to have it all figured out, but doesn't. Maybe it was because Mike's job kept him out of town more than usual, leaving Emily around the house more often. Whatever it was, I couldn't stop looking at her, and it was starting to feel like a problem. Jake's house was this Torrey Place in a quiet Austin suburb. The kind of neighborhood where everyone knows your business but pretends they don't. The lawns were manicured, the mailboxes all matched, and you could hear kids playing basketball down the street on any given evening. I was staying in their guest room, a small space with a twin bed and a desk that I'd turned into a makeshift office. I just graduated with a degree in computer science, but the job market wasn't exactly rolling out the red carpet for me. I spent my days sending out resumes to tech startups, tweaking my LinkedIn profile, and trying not to feel like a failure while I waited for something to stick. Jake, on the other hand, had landed a marketing job downtown, some entry-level gig at a firm that sounded cooler than it probably was. He was out of the house most days, leaving early and coming back late, sometimes with his new girlfriend Sarah in tow. That left me and Emily in the house more often than I'd expected. Emily worked from home doing some kind of consulting for small businesses. I didn't know the details. She'd explained it once, something about helping startups with their branding. But I was too distracted by the way she talked, the way her hands moved when she got excited about something, to really listen. Most mornings I'd come downstairs to find her in the kitchen, her laptop open on the island, a mug of coffee in her hand. She'd be wearing these flowy dresses that were casual but clung just enough to make you notice the curve of her hips, the way her collarbone caught the light. We'd talk while I poured myself cereal or made toast, small stuff at first, like the weather, or how Jake was settling into his job, or whether I'd heard back from any of the companies I'd applied to. But over time, those conversations stretched out, got deeper. She asked me about my plans, what I wanted out of life, what kind of mark I wanted to leave on the world. I'd asked her about her day, her work, what she did when she wasn't running the house or keeping Jake in line. She'd smile, tilt her head just so, and answer in a way that made me feel like she was letting me in on something private, something just for me. I didn't mean for it to happen. You don't wake up one day and decide you're going to start noticing your best friend's mom in a way that keeps you up at night, replaying the way she brushes her hair behind her ear, or laughs at your stupid jokes. But by early July, I was in deep, I'd catch myself staring when she wasn't looking, when she was out on the patio watering the potted plants she was so proud of, or when she was curled up on the couch with a book, her legs tucked under her. Her movements were so effortless, so natural, like she didn't know the effect she had. Or maybe she did. That was the thing about Emily. She was too sharp not to notice things. Too sharp not to notice the way my eyes lingered a little too long. The way I'd get quiet when she walked into a room. I tried to play it off to act normal, but it was like she could see right through me, and that only made it worse. It was a Thursday afternoon, one of those blistering Texas days where the heat presses down on you like a physical weight, and the AC in Jake's house was fighting a losing battle. Jake was at work, probably stuck in some meeting, and I was in the living room, sprawled on the couch, scrolling through job listings on my laptop. The house was quiet except for the faint sounds coming from the kitchen. Emily was in there, humming some song I didn't recognize, the steady chop of a knife against the cutting board filling the air. I don't know why I looked up, but I did, and there she was, standing at the counter, chopping vegetables for dinner. The sunlight was streaming through the window, catching the curve of her neck, turning her hair into this dark, glossy wave. She was wearing a light blue dress. Nothing fancy, but it hugged her in a way that made it hard to look away. I didn't realize how long I'd been staring until she stopped chopping, looked up, and met my eyes. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she asked. Her voice wasn't angry, but it wasn't soft either. It was direct, like she was daring me to say something real. My heart slammed against my chest so loud I was sure she could hear it. For a second, I thought about playing it off, making some dumb excuse like I was just zoning out, but I didn't. Maybe it was the heat. Maybe it was the way her eyes locked onto mine, like she was seeing every thought I'd ever had. But I said, "You know why?" The words came out before I could stop them, raw and honest, and the room felt like it shrank around us. She didn't flinch, didn't laugh it off or look away. She just stood there, knife still in her hand, her eyes searching mine. The air between us was buzzing like the moment before a storm breaks. "Careful, Ethan," she said finally, her voice low, almost a whisper. "You're playing with fire." I didn't know what to say to that. My throat was tight. My palms sweaty, I just nodded, grabbed my laptop, and bolted upstairs to the guest room. My heart still pounding like I'd just run a mile. That moment stuck with me, replaying in my head like a loop. I could still see the way she looked at me, the way her lips had parted just slightly, like she was about to say something else, but thought better of it. The next few days were weird. Not bad, just charged. Emily didn't bring up what I'd said. Didn't act like anything had happened, but she didn't pretend it had either. She'd catch my eye across the room and hold it a second longer than she needed to, like she was testing me. When we talked, there was this undercurrent, this unspoken thing that made every word feel heavier than it should have. Jake didn't notice a damn thing. He was too caught up in his job, his girlfriend, his own little world. But I was hyper-aware of every moment I spent around Emily. Every time she handed me a coffee mug and her fingers brushed mine. Every time she leaned in a little too close to show me something on her phone, pointing out a funny post or a photo from Jake's childhood. It wasn't just me imagining it. I knew it wasn't. There was something there, something real, even if either of us was saying it out loud. One night, Jake was out with Sarah and Mike was still off on some business trip in Dallas. It was just me and Emily in the house, and the quiet felt louder than usual. I was in the kitchen grabbing a beer from the fridge, trying to act like everything was normal when she walked in. She was wearing a black tank top and jeans, her hair loose, falling over her shoulders in a way that made her look younger, softer. She grabbed a glass of wine from the counter, and leaned against it, watching me. "You're quiet tonight," she said, her voice light, but with an edge I couldn't quite place. I shrugged, trying to play it cool, but my hands were sweaty around the beer bottle, and I could feel her eyes on me. "Just thinking," I said, taking a sip to buy myself some time. She raised an eyebrow, swirling her wine glass. "About what?" she asked. I could have lied. Could have said something about job applications or the heat, But instead I said about how I'm probably overstaying my welcome here. It was a half-truth, a way to dodge what I really wanted to say, that I couldn't stop thinking about her, that being in this house was starting to feel like walking a tightrope. She laughed soft and low, and the sound sent a shiver down my spine. "You're not," she said. "But you might want to figure out what you're doing, Ethan. With your life, with everything hung in the air like a challenge, like she was daring me to say what we were both dancing around. I wanted to say something bold, something that would push us past this game we were playing. But I didn't. I just nodded, muttered a good night, and went to my room. I lay awake for hours staring at the ceiling, thinking about the way she'd said my name, the way she looked at me like she could see every thought in my head. I was 22, unemployed, crashing in my best friend's guest room, and I was falling for his mom. It was a mess, but I couldn't stop it no matter how hard I tried. Things came to a head about a week later. Jake invited me to a barbecue at their house. Not a big deal. Just some family friends, a few neighbors, and a couple of his coworkers from the marketing firm. The backyard was buzzing with people. The smell of grilled burgers and sunscreen in the air. Emily was in her element, hosting like it was second nature, moving through the crowd with a tray of drinks, laughing, making sure everyone's plates were full. She was wearing this red sundress that hugged her in all the right places. And I swear it was like she was glowing. I tried to keep my distance, sticking to Jake and his buddies, talking about dumb stuff like the latest NFL draft picks or some new video game that was dropping soon. But every time I looked up, she was there catching my eye across the yard, smiling in a way that felt like it was meant just for me. It was subtle, but it was enough to make my chest tight. After a while, the noise and the heat got to me, so I slipped inside to grab another drink. The kitchen was quiet. The chatter from the backyard muffled through the sliding glass door. I was rummaging through the fridge, looking for a soda, when I heard the door slide open. Emily walked in, carrying an empty platter, her cheeks flushed from the sun. She set the platter on the counter and looked at me. "Hiding?" she asked, a teasing edge to her voice that made my stomach flip. I laughed, shaking my head. "Just needed a breather," I said, closing the fridge door. She nodded, stepping closer to grab a bottle of water from the fridge. She was close enough that I could smell her perfume. Something light like citrus and flowers that made my head spin. "You've been avoiding me," she said, not looking at me, her voice casual, but pointed. I froze the soda can cold against my palm. "I haven't." I lied, but my voice betrayed me, cracking just enough to give me away. She turned her eyes locking onto mine, and I swear it felt like the room got smaller. "Don't lie to me, Ethan," she said. "You're not good at it." I didn't know what to say. My mouth was dry, my heart racing so fast I thought it might burst. She took a step closer, close enough that I could see the faint freckles across her nose, the way her lips curved just slightly. "You need to stop looking at me like that," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not fair," I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "I can't help it," I said, and it was the truth, raw and unguarded. Her lips parted like she was about to say something. But then we heard Jake's voice from the backyard calling her name. She stepped back, grabbed the water bottle, and walked out without another word, leaving me standing there, trying to catch my breath, feeling like I'd just dodged a bullet or maybe missed a shot I'd never get again. The rest of the barbecue, I kept my distance, but I couldn't stop thinking about her, about how close we'd been, about the way her voice had dropped when she told me it wasn't fair. It was reckless, stupid, but I didn't care. I wanted her, and I was pretty sure she knew it. Maybe she even felt something, too. I couldn't tell, and that uncertainty was driving me crazy. I stayed until the crowd started to thin out, then made some excuse to Jake about needing to get back to job applications and headed upstairs, but I didn't sleep. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every look, every word. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Jake. He was heading out of town for a work thing, some conference in Houston, and wouldn't be back until the weekend. Mike was still gone, which meant it'd just be me and Emily in the house for a few days. My stomach flipped at the thought, part excitement, part dread. Part of me wanted to pack my bags and leave, get some space, clear my head before I did something I couldn't take back. But I didn't. I stayed, telling myself it was just easier, that I didn't have anywhere else to go. But deep down, I knew why I was staying. That first day alone with her was torture. She was her usual self. Friendly, warm, asking about my job search over coffee in the morning, teasing me about how I needed to stop living off cereal and learn to cook. But there was this edge to her, this awareness that hadn't been there before. We'd talk, and it was normal on the surface, but there was always this unspoken thing between us, like a current running just beneath the words. I'd catch her looking at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention. And I'd do the same, stealing glances when she was focused on her laptop or stirring something on the stove. It was like we were both waiting for the other to make a move, to say something that would break the tension or make it worse. That night, I was in the living room watching some dumb action movie on TV, trying to distract myself from the fact that she was in the house just a few rooms away. I was halfway through a scene with a car chase when she came in, a glass of wine in her hand, and sat on the other end of the couch. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, her voice casual, like it was no big deal. I shook my head, trying to focus on the screen, but all I could think about was how close she was, how the light from the TV caught the strands of her hair, turning them silver in the dark. We watched in silence for a while, but it wasn't comfortable silence. It was heavy, like we were both holding our breath. Halfway through the movie, she turned to me. "Ethan," she said, her voice soft but serious, like she'd been working up to this. "We need to talk." My heart sank because I knew what was coming. Or at least I thought I did. I muted the TV, turning to face her, bracing myself. "I know I've been sending mixed signals," she said, setting her wine glass down on the coffee table, "and that's not fair to you. You're young. You've got your whole life ahead of you, and I'm Jake's mom. This can't happen." Her words hit like a punch. Not because they were harsh, but because they were true. I nodded because what else could I do? She was right, but it didn't make it hurt any less. "I get it," I said, my voice rough, barely above a whisper. "But it doesn't change how I feel." She looked at me, her eyes soft but guarded, like she was trying to keep herself from saying too much. "I know," she said finally. "And that's why I need you to figure out what you're doing. You can't stay here forever, Ethan. Not like this." She stood up, her movements quick, like she needed to get out of the room before she said something she couldn't take back. She walked out, leaving me sitting there feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. The movie was still playing, but I didn't hear a word of it. All I could think about was her, and how she was right, and how much I hated that she was right. The next day, I started packing, not because I wanted to leave, but because I knew I had to. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, caught between what I wanted and what I knew was impossible. I spent the morning scrolling through apartment listings, found a cheap studio downtown that I could just barely afford with the last of my savings. I called the landlord, set up a viewing, and by the end of the day, I'd put down a deposit. When I told Jake I was moving out, he was bummed, but didn't push it. "You sure, man?" he asked over the phone. "You know, you can stay as long as you need." I told him I appreciated it, but it was time. I didn't tell him the real reason. Didn't tell him that staying in that house was starting to feel like drowning. Emily, though, she didn't say much when I told her. I found her in the kitchen the next morning, same as always, her coffee mug in hand, her laptop open. I told her I'd found a place that I'd be out by the end of the week. She looked at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable, then gave me a small smile. "I'm proud of you," she said, and it felt like a goodbye, but not the kind I wanted. I wanted to say something more, something that would make her know how much she'd gotten under my skin, how much that summer had changed me. But I didn't. I just nodded, said thanks, and went back to packing. I moved out a week later, my stuff crammed into a couple of duffel bags and a few cardboard boxes. The last time I saw Emily, she was standing in the kitchen, same as always, her coffee mug in hand, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. I wanted to say something, anything to make her understand what she'd meant to me. How those moments, the looks, the conversations, that one afternoon when I said, "You know why?" had shifted something in me. But I didn't. I just said, "Thanks for everything," and walked out the door, my heart heavy, but my head clear for the first time in weeks. It's been a few months now, and I'm still figuring things out. I landed a job at a tech startup. Nothing glamorous, just answering support tickets and debugging code, but it's a start. The pay is enough to cover my rent and keep me from eating instant noodles every night. I see Jake sometimes. We grab a beer, catch up, talk about the old days. He's still with Sarah, still grinding away at his marketing job, still oblivious to what went down that summer. I haven't seen Emily since I moved out, and I'm not sure I want to. Not because I don't miss her, because I do more than I should, but because seeing her would bring it all back, and I'm not sure I'm strong enough to handle that. I think about her, though, more than I want to admit. That moment in the kitchen when I said, "You know why?" still plays in my head over and over like a song I can't stop humming. I don't know if it meant anything to her, or if I was just a dumb kid who got in over his head, reading too much into a look or a smile, but it felt real to me, like something I'll carry with me for a long time, maybe forever. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd said more, if I'd pushed past the boundaries we both knew were there. But then I remember her words. "You're playing with fire." And I know she was right. Some things are better left alone, even if they're the things you want most. I'm trying to move forward to focus on my job, my life, the future I'm supposed to be building. But every now and then when I'm alone in my apartment, the AC humming in the background, I'll catch myself thinking about that summer, about the way the sunlight caught her hair, about the way her eyes held mine like she saw everything I was trying to hide. And I'll wonder if she ever thinks about me, too. Probably not. But sometimes, just sometimes, that's